This is Ira, and welcome to Ocean Liners on Print, where I delve into my collection of ocean liner memorabilia to take you on a journey through maritime history as we explore the publication Cunard Comparisons from 1924. Remember to hit that subscribe button. During the 1920s, progress was measured in length, height, and speed. This booklet from Cunard Comparisons, is a promotional piece published at around 1924, which is a fascinating look at the vast Cunard Anchor Line fleet, comparing its fleet and individual ships to major landmarks across America and Canada. Quote, this 14.5-ton drop-forged anchor was required to hold the Berengaria safely, and the lengths of its chain, with a breaking strength of 260 tons, will easily hoist one of our modern locomotives. Close quote. Look at the man with his arms spread out between the flukes of the Berengaria's anchor to demonstrate the scale of its size. For all you baseball fans, quote, the Great Berengaria, placed in the American League Baseball Stadium in New York, Babe Ruth's longest hit ball would fall far short of her great length. Close quote. The reference is to Yankee Stadium, which was 1 year old when this brochure was published, and an architectural marvel for the time. Babe Ruth was front page news, so his longest hit of 600 feet fell short of the 919-foot length of the Berengaria. Wouldn't that be a scary sight, driving on the Major Deegan Expressway passing Yankee Stadium with the Berengaria's bow sticking up in the air over it? I would lose control for sure. Quote, if the Berengaria were placed against Chicago's lakefront, close quote, with a depth at the shore of 16 to 25 feet at the lakefront, it would be improbable to have the Berengaria placed at Chicago's lakefront with its draft of 35 feet. It would make for an impressive sight, though. Quote, showing the relative dimensions of the T. Eaton and Company Limited department store in Winnipeg, Manitoba, the largest store in Canada west of the Great Lakes, and the Berengaria. It will be seen that even if good fortune continues to smile upon this great firm, it must more than double its present size to rival the Berengaria, close quote. It's interesting how they decided on this comparison. Maybe T. Eaton and Company Limited paid for the advertisement. Now we are talking cool comparisons. Quote, the giant Berengaria as contrasted with the Woolworth Building and the Shenandoah, close quote. What a sight it would be if you had next to the 792-foot-high Woolworth Building, the tallest office building in the world at the time, the 919-foot-long Berengaria standing vertical. It would be easier to imagine the Shenandoah airship flying over the Berengaria. The imagination behind these comparisons is nothing short of amazing. Quote, Charles Dickens selected the best Britannia stateroom in 1842. The best of 1842 seems very antiquated as contrasted with a typical double room with private bath on the Berengaria, close quote. The Britannia was part of the original Cunard quartet that plied the Atlantic, calling on Liverpool, Halifax, and Boston starting in 1840. Quote, the huge propellers of the Franconia and Mauretania as they appear in dry dock, close quote. Look at the circular illustration on the left. There is a man sitting on the hub of a propeller, as well as a man standing to the right, both placed to establish the scale of size for the propellers. Quote, swimming pool and sports arena of the Franconia and Mauretania, close quote. Quote, to illustrate fully the size of the swimming pools on these steamers, it is interesting to note that they are 2 feet longer each way than the famous swimming pool of the Women's Swimming Association in New York, in which so many Olympic champions have been trained, close quote. Look how the scale of size is established here by showing the 4 staterooms on the deck above. So far, the Cunard comparisons have focused on size and modernity. Now let's talk about consumption. Quote, the livestock, game, etc., which is required to supply the larders of the Mauretania for one trip. Close quote. A larder is where they store food on the ship. Look at the large farm area to raise all of this livestock for one voyage. And then let's take a look at all of this livestock itemized. 250 pheasants, 500 pigeons, 300 grouse or grouse, 1,000 quail, 300 partridge, 250 snipe. Stocking the larders for a voyage on the Mauretania is really for the birds. Let's continue. 150 pigs, 250 sheep and lamb, 750 heads of cattle and calves, 125 geese, 250 turkeys, 500 ducks, 3,000 fowl. This is truly for the birds. The Mauretania's enormous pulling power. Quote, 780 100 horsepower racing cars would be required to hold this record speed ship with its 78,000 horsepower. The Mauretania holds all transatlantic speed records, close quote. The Mauretania held the speed record from 1907 to 1929 at just over 27 knots. So, Cunard comparisons are based on size, consumption, and speed. Once again, an amazing, imaginative illustration to make a comparison. Now, the Great Cunard and Anchor Fleet stretching in line from far out in the Atlantic through the Panama Canal out to the Pacific. So now, the boasting of the size of the fleet. Quote, assuming that the world's fastest ship, the Mauretania, could maintain her best record speed of 27.04 knots along the line of the equator, she would encircle the globe in 38 days, 12 hours, 33 minutes, and 22 seconds. Who thinks of this? Quote, so speedy is the Mauretania that were it possible to start her from Europe at the same time certain other storage ships were leaving, the Mauretania would be entering New York Harbor while other vessels were approximately in the positions indicated, close quote. This is a creative way of illustrating the progress in speed demonstrated by the Mauretania versus other vessels that preceded her. Quote, the 3 largest municipal ferries in the world placed across the length of the Aquitania, close quote. A great comparison to illustrate the size of this force stacker. Here we go into provisions. Quote, the staple provisions required to feed this traveling city, the giant Aquitania, close quote. 16,000 quarts of clams, 1,221 quarts of oysters, 30 tons fresh fish, 15 tons ham and bacon, 80 tons meat, 19,112 fowl, 5,139 pounds of cheese, 4,807 pounds of potatoes, 1,440 gallons of milk, 239,589 eggs, 29,768 pounds of sugar. I figure wherever there's sugar, there's got to be ants. 520 boxes of apples, 3,544 pineapple, 9,450 quarts of ice cream, 625 boxes of oranges, 12,561 pounds of butter, That is a lot of provisions. Quote, an 8-car section of a typical American Express train could be placed and sustained on the upper deck of the Aquitania from the first to the fourth funnel with ample clearance as shown, close quote. Once again, an imaginative comparison. Quote, a subway train, New York City, could pass through one of the funnels of the Aquitania, close quote. Quote, showing the magnitude of the Aquitania compared with the Capitol at Washington, D.C., close quote. Quote, if the Aquitania were placed on the streetcar lines in Copley Square, Boston, Massachusetts, close quote. Cunard's 20,000-ton liner compared with the Washington Monument, the Scythia, Samaria, and Laconia. Quote, the Washington Monument could be placed in the hull of one of the popular 20,000 tonners, the Scythia, Samaria, and Laconia, close quote. Most of the comparisons in this booklet are with American themes. I wonder if this booklet was aimed primarily towards an American audience. Quote, the entire Cunard and anchor fleet in New York Harbor would completely block navigation, close quote. On the back cover, quote, Cunard and Anchor Steamship Lines, fastest passenger and freight steamers in the world. There is no better way, close quote. There is no better way, in my opinion, is a fantastic tagline. The only tagline better in maritime history, which also belongs to Cunard, is one that they used in the 1950s. Getting there is half the fun. Further down the back page, the cities that are served, the ports of call, and the fleet. Each ship is listed individually. Cruises and tours. Cunard has a tourist department. Quote, drive your own car in Europe. The Cunard Line is now prepared to handle all the details of shipping your car abroad. Crating, duties, plates, licenses, foreign club dues, maps, etc. We shall be glad to send you a remarkable book by a New York businessman telling in full detail how pleasantly he did this recently, close quote. Contact the automobile department. So Cunard had an automobile department. Cunard also issued traveler's checks. Cunard had multiple offices. And the quote below, accommodations may also be secured at any steamship ticket or tourist agency, close quote. So there was no online booking back in the 1920s. So either you had to go to a travel agent or a Cunard office in order to book your ticket. Let's go through some pictorial examples of first the anchor line and then the Cunard line. So let's start with the anchor line. And we have the Cameronia, Assyria, California, Caledonia, Colombia. And now for pictorial examples of the Cunard Line. Samaria, the Franconia, whose propellers were illustrated in the Cunard Comparisons book, the Carmania, Caronia. The Carmania and Caronia were sister ships. These two ships were an experiment that Cunard conducted to see as to whether or not they should continue using standard, for the time, steam reciprocating engines or Parsons turbines. So in the Carmania, they used Parsons turbines, yet in the Caronia, they used the traditional steam reciprocating engines. And what they found was that the turbine-driven Carmania was more fuel efficient as well as slightly faster. As a result, from then on, all of Cunard's new builds utilized turbines, and other lines were put to follow. So this experiment by Cunard revolutionized propulsion technology in the maritime industry. The Laconia, Tuscania, Aquitania. The Aquitania was 45,000 tons and 901 feet long. The Samaria, Lancastria. Lancastria had an unfortunate end where 4,000 to 7,000 people died on the ship during the evacuation of Brits from France after France fell to the Nazis in 1940. The ship was attacked and sank. This 4,000 to 7,000 number compares to the 1,500 who perished on the Titanic, 1,200 on the Lusitania, and 1,000 on the Empress of Ireland. Yet, there seems to be very little interest in this disaster, unlike the others. One possible reason might be that the ship was operating under wartime. This was not a civilian voyage. That's just one possible theory as to why there is very little interest in this. This is not the only example of a wartime major catastrophe involving a ship sinking and massive loss of life. A couple of other examples include the Wilhelm Gustloff and the Cap Arcona, which many thousands of people perished when these ships were attacked and sank. Alaunia, the Mauretania. The Mauretania, of course, was the speed record holder from 1907 to 1929. And then the Berengaria, which was acquired by the Cunard Line from Germany after World War I via reparations. The Berengaria became the flagship of the Cunard Line at 919 feet in length and 52,000 tons.
I hope you enjoyed Cunard Comparisons. What an imaginative marketing piece to stimulate interest in taking a Cunard voyage in the 1920s. Hit the subscribe button to receive alerts for new videos from the channel. It helps the channel. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon at Ocean Liners on Print.